Managing a small team or business comes with a unique set of challenges. With limited resources and manpower, it's easy for things to feel chaotic and out of your control. How can you, as a leader, accomplish your goals while keeping your team engaged, effective, and accountable? This podcast will give you practical strategies you can implement now to lead your team or business to reach its fullest potential. Welcome to the Organizing Chaos podcast with your host, Danny Coleman.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Organizing Chaos, where we find small practical strategies for small teams and small businesses. And I've got my camera back, finally. I'm really happy with it. If you're in the market for a good webcam, the Logitech C920, it is pretty fantastic. It was under $100, a little bit north of 50, I think. Can't remember offhand. On Amazon, I really, really like it. And it works with my Macintosh computer. So I have a MacBook Air. It's the most up-to-date operating system at this time. It's like, July almost? So anyways, so without further ado, I want to jump right into today's topic. So it's 3 things that you can outsource right now. And I've talked a lot about outsourcing in the past, and I want to I'm going to keep on saying a lot of the same stuff over and over again, because these are the things that I see from my experience, either in small business and my experience since consulting with small businesses, are typically the things that are missed opportunities. So one of the things I do when I consult with someone is I look at what their business looks like and what needs to get done, and I try to figure out what can be outsourced within their business. And then, of course, if they want to, try to help them outsource that. You can outsource anything now. Any part of your business that doesn't require your physical presence can be outsourced. And even the stuff that requires your physical presence, with some creativity, can be completed by someone else. And I'm going to hit on that here on the third point here, which I call hungry high schooler work. I'll talk more about that later. But just to kind of briefly hit on how important outsourcing is, you need to think about, if you're an entrepreneur or you're the leader of your team, you need to think about your time as the most valuable commodity in the business. And I know that sounds almost like selfish, or it sounds kind of high and mighty or whatever, but that's the truth. The truth is that if you're the owner or you're the leader, it's your job to stay at the end of the spear. You're at the point of the spear. You're always driving forwards. You should be driving forwards, pushing ahead. And when you're dragged down by the work that's required for your business to operate in the way that it's supposed to, and for the quality of service or the quality product to be consistently delivered, if you're all dragged down in those details in order to produce that, then you're not going to be staying where you really need to, which is where your team needs you, which is at the tip of the spear. So I've hashed it out before, and I'll do just a small hash here again. As an entrepreneur or as a leader, your job is to create work for other people. Don't feel bad about outsourcing, or don't feel bad about not doing some certain type of rigmarole type task. It's fine for you to feel that way. And in fact, the best thing that you can do for your team is to outsource it to them, because you can keep on pushing forward, creating jobs and creating work for people. And then the people behind you, the people who you hire on your team, can support you, and it gives them something to do. It gives them a job. You create jobs. You give someone an opportunity to make money, to live, to provide for their family, to have purpose. So you as the entrepreneur, you as the leader, you need to be seen at the end of the tip, or the tip of the spear rather, and letting other people do the work that is required to deliver on your product. So if you think of yourself as the person who brings the work in or creates the work, and then you give it to other people to then execute and put in place. So without further ado, outsourcing is it's easier now than it's ever been before. And a lot of people that I'll speak to, when I say the word outsource, they think, like the economy and we're losing jobs to other countries and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily mean that. There are people that you can outsource your work to that are in other countries, sure. But it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. So if you want to keep jobs in America or whatever, I understand what you're trying to get at, and you can do that still by outsourcing. Outsourcing does not necessarily mean outside the country. So hopefully that's clear. So, but like I was saying, when I talk to people about outsourcing, their first thought is like, well, that costs money. Okay, well, my question to you is, how much is your time worth? As the owner of a business, or as an entrepreneur, as a leader, if you don't know what your time is worth, your business is not going to do well. You have got to figure out what your time is worth. Sorry, I hit the microphone just now. If you don't do that, then you're not gonna know what activities you should be engaging in, right? So think about it like this: if you had an employee who you had to pay $50 per hour, and you had another employee who you paid $10 per hour, and someone needed to be, I don't know, drop the deposit off at the bank, every week, and that's something that, let's just say, took a whole hour. Why would you pay $50 to just have someone go drop something off at the bank when someone could also just do that same thing for $10 per hour? If you're concerned about things like security and whatnot, I can get that. But that's the point here, is create a way so that you can have the $10 hour person do the work rather than needing to rely on the $50 per hour person, which is most of the time you or the business owner or the leader. So that's what I want you to think about when we're talking about outsourcing here. Is we're not talking about just spending money willy-nilly. It's a smart business decision to take your time and understand what that's worth in a monetary sense as best you can, and then compare that with the work that needs to be done, and give all the work that isn't worthy of a $50 per hour person or whatever your rate ends up being, and take that work and give it to someone who is 10, 12, 13, 15, whatever, something lower than $50 per hour. So hopefully I've made my point and sold you on the idea of outsourcing. And if I haven't, I apologize. This podcast really isn't about selling you on outsourcing. It's more just about, if you were thinking about outsourcing, what are the 3 things you can do. So I'll have another topic or another podcast episode later. I'm sure I've already actually had a few where I've tried to sell people on outsourcing, but this is what I do everywhere I go. Every time I talk to somebody, I'm like, outsource, outsource, outsource. So the first thing that I try to help people outsource, and in fact, also for me, the first thing that I outsourced for my business was administrative functions. So administrative functions, things like coordinating schedules, right? Like getting people on your calendar. Things like running payroll, perhaps. Getting new paperwork, new employee paperwork, processed. Ordering stickers, checking email. Sometimes, you need someone to help you check your email if you've got an overloaded inbox or whatever. There's a lot of different things that can fit into administrative, but it's typically the type of stuff that you don't think about. It just kind of fills up your day. So one way to help with this whole process, specifically as it relates to administrative functions, is to create a stop doing list. So every time that you find yourself doing something that you don't feel merits $50 per hour to be paid to get done, write that down on your stop doing list. And again, I say $50 per hour, I'm kind of ballparking here, but you have to figure out, everyone's going to be different. You have to figure out what your hourly rate is if you consider yourself as an employee of the business. So anyways, but yeah, administrative functions, that's definitely the biggest one that people, you can immediately give yourself some time back by administrative functions. Another one too, that has been really helpful for me, or I actually did mention this, but the calendar, like having a calendar coordination, that's been huge for me to have my administrative assistant help me coordinate my calendar and making sure the things that I need to have on that calendar are there. For instance, things like community events that I need to be at, or different like commission meetings and school board meetings and things like that. It probably takes her about an hour, maybe 2 hours, throughout the whole week to make sure that all that stuff's done for me. And I pay her $12 an hour, so that's $24 for me to have everything that I need on my calendar coordinated by somebody else. So it doesn't take my brain power. I can just look at my week and see what's on there. If I need to scratch something, I can scratch something. But I'm not going to get into how to do all that, how to get somebody to do all the administrative functions. But just identify what administrative functions in your business can be done by somebody else and take the time to outsource that. I'll hit on that really quick too. A big deterrent that keeps people from outsourcing stuff is the initial block of time that it takes to kind of package that up so that you can give it to somebody else. But I can tell you right now, if you take, 2 hours, right, to package up a function that maybe takes you an hour a day to complete, right? So let's say a 5-day work week, 5 hours per week. You take 2 hours, you can then get rid of you get 5 hours back now forever. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to get at here. Think about things like that. So when you're like, oh man, it's just easier for me to do it, stop yourself. Like, remember this podcast episode. I hope you will. Like, oh, this is exactly what Danny said. If I'm thinking to myself that I should just do it because it'll be faster that way, stop, take 2 hours or however long it takes for you to articulate the process out and get rid of it, and then be gone, then be done with it. Like, you don't have to deal with it anymore. So anyway, I can tell you, just I'm experiencing this a lot right now myself, and I would explode if I had to keep on doing some of the stuff that I've been able to outsource. And again, I'm also now able to get great people on my team and give them a job or a way to make some extra side money right now. And so it's a win-win for everybody. But I digress. Number 2, okay, marketing. So small businesses specifically are who I'm speaking to right now. Because if you're a small team within a larger organization, you typically don't have to worry about marketing. But for a small business, it's very rare that I ever have met a business or worked for a business where there was actually a marketing expert or someone who was qualified to do small business marketing. And so because that's the case, better than waste your money or waste your time or have an inconsistent marketing program, outsource it. Outsource it to someone, and that professional that you outsource this to is going to be able to help you realize, what is it that your capability is. So a lot of small businesses I work with, they kind of turn on and off the marketing faucet, if you will. They're not consistent. So they're like, for a while they're really active on social media and they're doing specials and things like that. And then it falls off because they don't have a dedicated person who's doing it. It's a shared responsibility. That happens, most of the time. Or you have, your marketing efforts are just, very slim. You're not really sure how to market your business. So you do nothing or almost nothing. So when you can outsource that, if you might not be willing to spend the money for anything marketing related, which I think is a mistake, but I understand why small businesses have to do it sometimes. If you have something allotted towards marketing, have a professional be the person to administrate how you spread that money around. If it's a finite amount of money, make sure every dollar counts. And if you're not a pro at it, find someone who is. So outsource anything marketing related that you're able to, and I guarantee you will not only see better success, but you'll understand more. You'll feel more confident rather putting money into marketing because you have someone who knows what they're doing, coordinating how that marketing spend goes. So I won't get into the details of everything that marketing related that you can outsource, but I'm just to summarize it all. If you're not a marketing pro, find one and use them. And again, you can find all types of people who will work at all different pay scales. And again, there's obviously going to be a disparity between experience and pay. If you can pay little, you're not going to get as much experience, vice versa. But that said, go out there, figure out what your budget is, and go out there and find someone who fits your budget. And they're going to do a better job than you are in almost every case. And I'll talk about a few websites that I use at the end of this episode. So the last but not least, I call this the hungry high schooler work. So I've worked with a lot of different businesses or teams, and there would be different things that they're weird. They're odds and end type work, and oftentimes hard to quantify or hard to schedule or know, far out in advance. But that work can be done again by someone, and I say hungry high schooler, it can be anybody. I use hungry high schooler because it's something that doesn't require a lot or almost no experience at all. I'll give you a couple examples here. So there's a real estate team that I worked with, and one part of something that would oftentimes take some time, it was putting signs in yards or taking signs down or updating them from under contract to pending or something like that. And so oftentimes the real estate agent themselves would be the one who ends up going out there and putting the sign up or updating it or something like that. But that's not the highest and best use of their time. They could have been spending that time at a networking event or having coffee with a prospective seller or anything else that would have actually generated new income. Versus, if you have a teenager, someone after he's done with his high school stuff or she's done with her high school stuff, after a school day, goes out and puts signs in the 5 houses that you just listed, that's an incredibly better use of time than for you to go do it. So that's just one example. And then, other examples as far as hungry high schooler work too would be I don't know, if you have a marquee, changing your marquee, take things that, for instance, I don't know, even cleaning up your office or something like that. It's all these little things that you don't think of that are going to take your time. But when you take all that add all that together, and the cumulative amount of time that equals out to, when you trade a couple of dollars to get all that time back, and also it the cognitive load, the burden on your mind that kind of the extra stuff ends up being. I'm just telling you from experience and from seeing it, it's the best thing that you can do as far as letting yourself sit in the zone of genius. You're the thing that you're best at. Spend your time there, pioneering forwards, creating more work, and creating new business for you and your team. So some of the platforms that I use to find these freelancers, well, first of all, the obvious one is Craigslist. If you need someone who's physically present in your area to be around, like I said, the hungry high schooler work or whatever, where they need to be somewhere in the proximity that your business operates or you operate, then use Craigslist. Sometimes people think like, well, who's going to want a 5-hour per week job or a 10-hour per week job? A lot of people are looking for that. There's a lot of people who already have a 40-hour per week job, and they would like to have something that's 5 or 10 extra hours per week so that they can fit that around their schedule. They can go out and do that work on their own time, or based on your deadlines, and you guys coordinate that schedule together or whatever. But yeah, so lots of people are looking for that, and I've never had a time where I posted an ad for a 5 or 10 hour or under 20 per hour, at all different increments. Like I said, from 5 to 20. So yeah. The platforms that I use, starting off, is going to be Craigslist. So Craigslist is great for if you're looking for someone who needs to be in your locale or in the geographic area where you live. This is, like I said, good for the hungry high schooler work. You need someone who's around. If you think that someone's not going to work for 10, 15, 20 hours per week, even at minimum wage, or maybe like $10 per hour or something like that, you're wrong. Every time that I've posted an ad for someone to work at that, for 5 hours or whatever, and again, these are all $12 under type jobs, I've always filled the position. So people are out there looking for side jobs all the time. Very few people who are going to take your job this is going to be their sole thing that they do. They more than likely have a full-time job, and they're looking for something to complement, and that's what your work can do. So that's what Craigslist is, one of the first platforms that I always go to, like I said, especially if I need them geographically nearby. Secondly, I use a program called Fiverr. I've talked about Fiverr before. I actually did a whole episode on it, I think. So if you want to hear more about Fiverr, you can obviously Google it yourself, or you can look for a previous episode I did. I'm pretty sure I just called it Fiverr or something to that effect. Fiverr's in the name. But it is essentially this thing about like the dollar store for specific work needing done. So to give you an example, right now I have my business partner Brian, who runs a real estate education business. I run his team for him, and we are looking to get one of the webinar that he does every week. We're trying to get that webinar transcribed. So we want it basically to be able to send a transcript to people who missed the webinar, and has pictures of the slides and verbatim all the things that Brian said. That's a very specific type of work that needs to be done, and you can find that type of work on Fiverr. So you can find very specific types of people who are good at specific types of tasks, and outsource something to them. And not only are they're good at it because they do it day in, day out, almost robotically, but they also can charge less because they're either in other countries and their cost of living is not as high, or even if they live here, they just simply don't need to charge a ton of money to do something, like I said, that they have a system set up very well to bam, 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 knock them out. So Fiverr is another one. And then last but not least is Upwork. Upwork is probably the best place to go if you want to find someone who's really high quality, and who you may even see as like a peripheral member of your team. So like that'd be I recommend using Upwork for, if you're looking for someone to take over the marketing stuff. I would go there rather than Fiverr. Fiverr can do some specific things for you. For instance, maybe making thumbnails for your YouTube videos, or something like that. You're putting text on social media images, or just regularly posting for you, or something like that. Fiverr is good for that. But if you want someone who's going to bring a little bit of intelligence, or maybe that sounds condescending, but a little bit of strategy rather to the position or to what you need done, I recommend using Upwork. So I just recently used Upwork to hire a tech generalist. So one of the things that I've outsourced just recently, and I'm going to do another episode about this later, is tech stuff, right? General tech stuff. I have been the tech person for the last, my whole life. I've always been the tech guy at any small business or team that I worked for. I was the guy who was uploading apps, deploying iPads and getting computers set up, and figuring out how to use Google Drive when that first launched, and putting websites together, and all that kind of techno mumbo jumbo, that a lot of people a lot of small businesses might oftentimes struggle with. That was me. And I never even thought about letting that go because that was kind of one of my Swiss Army knife things. Like I'm able to, if I'm working for someone, I'm doing some freelance work for them, I was always able to help out with the technology stuff. And even now when I consult, I'm really tempted to kind of get in there and do that. But now I've outsourced that. So not only just for the work that I do that previously was done, or the technology work rather that I used to do for different clients that I did myself, I've now found someone who can do that for less than what my dollar per hour rate would have been. So I'm able to get that time back as well as take that mental or that cognitive load off my brain because I have another professional who's very good at doing it. And for a long time, I didn't outsource it because I would think to myself, well, how can I explain this? Because really you just need a knack for this specific thing. You need a knack for technology. You have to be hungry to want to figure it out. You got to have an aptitude towards things like how do you get programs to work together and talk together and what are APIs and things like that. So anyways, I didn't ever get outside my brain for 10 years to try to figure out, hey, can someone else do this for me? So now I've done that and I can tell you it is awesome. And again, this is one of those things that even I, as much as I preach the outsourced gospel, I'd never outsourced this. And I stepped outside my comfort zone and I did it. And I don't say that to my own horn, but I say if I can do that for something that it's been ingrained in me for the last 10 years to do, if I can figure out how to get it off my plate, you can figure out how to get this stuff off your plate too. So do what you need to for your team. And that is be the tip of the spear that brings in the new work, that thinks up the big ideas and solves the big problems, and leave the rest of the work to your team. Show them that you trust them and give them purpose and things to do in your business so that you guys can all be successful together. And if you have any kind of questions whatsoever, you can always hit me up, danny@dannycoleman.me. Follow me, Twitter and Instagram. I am Danny Coleman. And if you ever have any interest in being on the podcast or in submitting a question or asking me to talk about something, I would love to hear that. Danny@dannycoleman.me is my email address. And I hope that you guys are doing well, and I will catch you all later.
Want more? Go to dannycoleman.me to download Danny's free small business hiring guide, which includes tips, templates, and tools, plus a step-by-step process you can use to find and keep high-quality employees for your small team or business.